Good evening. I'm Haylee Ficuciello, and this is your Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Report, bringing you the most significant federal cases across Northeast United States. Tonight, from child exploitation convictions to environmental crimes decades in the making, to multi-million-dollar fraud schemes and violent threats against federal officials, we take you from courtroom to consequences. We begin in Maine, where federal prosecutors secure a significant sentence in a disturbing child exploitation case. A Keeney-Buckport man has been sentenced to decades behind bars after authorities uncovered child sexual abuse material inside his home. 41-year-old Kevin Rockwell was sentenced by Chief U.S. District Judge Lance Walker to 20 years in federal prison, followed by life of supervised release. Rockwell must pay $104,000 in restitution to the victims. The case stemmed from a November 2024 search warrant when federal agents seized a tablet containing numerous explicit images and videos involving prepubescent children. Rockwell admitted to ownership of the device and the files. This was not his first offense. Rockwell was already under federal supervision for prior child pornography convictions and will now serve an additional 18 consecutive months for violating that release. Also in Maine, a federal immigration case out of Bangor. 32-year-old Marlon Rene Avila Cruz, a Honduran national, was sentenced after illegally re-entering the United States following deportation. He was also stopped during a routine traffic violation in Farmington, where authorities discovered he had previously been removed from the country. Avila Cruz received a time-served sentence after spending months in federal custody. In New Haven, a dangerous explosive case, 57-year-old Dale Stewart Jr. pled guilty to possession of an unregistered destructive device after detonating a pipe bomb in Ware. Investigators say Stewart set off explosives across 2 days in April of 2023, prompting emergency response teams. A third, undetonated device was later recovered from his vehicle. He admitted to building the bombs himself in Webster home. And in a case highlighting environmental enforcement, a New York business owner and his company were sentenced for illegally dumping pollutants into the Sogan River. 60-year-old Charles Stinch received 18 months in prison, while Old Dutch Mustard Company was ordered to pay $1.5 million in fines. Authorities say the violation dated back for decades, with deliberate efforts to evade environmental monitoring. In Boston, Massachusetts, a widespread mail theft and fraud scheme. 24-year-old Jasmine Romano Delgado was sentenced for stealing checks from the USPS mailbox and altering them using chemicals. The scheme ran for months, resulting in fraudulent deposits and cash withdrawals. He must now pay $39,000 in restitution. In a deeply disturbing case, a Guatemalan national, previously deported twice, was sentenced to 13 years in prison for child exploitation and illegal re-entry. Police discovered two missing 14-year-olds inside his Dorchester apartment, one found in a vulnerable and intoxicated stage. Digital evidence confirmed the abuse. Federal prosecutors are also pursuing a major financial fraud case. A Florida man, Jose Bello, is accused of operating a multi-state Ponzi scheme, defrauding investors of at least $5.7 million. Authorities say funds were never invested, instead using to pay off earlier investors and personal gambling. And in a cyber stalking case crossing state lines, a New Hampshire man has been indicted for allegedly orchestrating a year-long harassment campaign, distributing illicit images and targeting minors. More than 300 images were reportedly circulated online. In Connecticut, a case tied to war crimes overseas. A woman has been sentenced to 30 months in prison for lying to obtain U.S. citizenship, concealing her role in an abuse of a prisoner during a Bosnian conflict. Another case involves the exploitation of minors online. A New Haven man is charged with coercion of minors and traveling across state lines to engage in illegal sexual activity. He faces potential life in prison if convicted. Also, a Chinese national pled guilty to escaping from federal prison facility in Danbury. And in a narcotics case, an Ansonia man admitted to trafficking fentanyl and cocaine with more than 58 grams of fentanyl recovered at arrest. In Rhode Island, a major drug trafficking indictment, a Utah man is accused of coordinating delivery of 30 kilograms of cocaine. He was arrested during a planned transaction involving a tractor trailer. Meanwhile, a California man has pled guilty to stalking and threatening women across multiple states through hundreds of obscene calls. In New York, multiple federal cases ranging from narcotics to fraud. An Oswego County man admitted to distributing Molly across the region. A former nurse practitioner pled guilty to illegally redistributing prescription drugs to patients. Authorities also arrest Massachusetts man in Albany after allegedly attempting to meet a minor for sexual activity, communicating with undercover agents. And in Buffalo, a grand jury indicted a man accused of COVID relief funds involving fraudulent PPP loans and identity theft. Another defendant admitted to distributing over 450 kilograms of cocaine in a large-scale trafficking conspiracy. Here in New Jersey, an Essex County man was sentenced to more than 12 years in prison for armed pharmacy robberies. And a longtime fugitive behind a $13 million psych mail fraud scheme was sentenced after extradition from Italy. In Pennsylvania, a case involving threats against federal officials. A Butler man was pled guilty to threatening to kill President Donald Trump, federal officials, and ICE agents, posting messages online and stockpiling weapons. Other cases include a convicted felon sentenced for illegal firearm possession, COVID relief fund resulting in prison time, methamphetamine distribution cases, and a longtime teacher sentenced for child pornography offenses. And finally, Delaware, a repeat immigration offender sentenced for drug trafficking after returning to the U.S. multiple times illegally. Meanwhile, two men face federal charges after immigration seized large quantities of methamphetamine and firearm, including ghost guns. From narcotic trafficking to fraud to violent threats and crimes against children, federal courts across Northeast continue to prosecute some of the most serious offenses impacting our communities. For continued coverage, stay with Englebrook Independent News. I'm Haylee Ficuciello. From courtroom to the truth. Good night.